In 2017, Isabella longed for a honeymoon, hoping to reignite their carefree early days. On May 14, after a long day, her husband asked Isabella to take over the catamaran so he could rest. He dozed off in the cabin. Suddenly, a loud thud woke him. He called for Isabella, but no answer. Up top, he saw she was gone, and water was flooding in through a hole in the boat. It was sinking fast. Despite 120 hours passing since the catamaran wreck, search efforts continued. The chances of finding Isabella alive in the open sea dwindled with each passing hour. On May 18, the search was called off, with Isabella still missing. Who was Isabella Rodriguez? What happened to her? Was she kept missing or found dead at last? This is your partner in crime stories. Subscribe and let's move along this mysterious journey ahead. Isabella Rodriguez, born in Colombia in 1975, had big dreams of America. She soaked up English from books and songs, but that Southern accent stuck. Still, she landed in Florida, hustling as a real estate agent, helping Spanish speakers find homes. In 2002, Isabella tied the knot with William Hellman, but their marriage was a roller coaster of fights. After a decade of ups and downs, they called it quits, filing for divorce that dragged on for 2 years. At that time, Isabella thought she found happiness with a new guy. Lewis Bennett, Isabella's new flame, had an interesting backstory. He was from the UK, but grew up in Australia, snagging dual citizenship. Instead of pursuing his mining degree, he started a solar panel business, which took off. Within 4 years, he expanded to the US, setting up shop in Florida. Lewis, on the hunt for a wife online, had a tough time finding the right match. Most profiles didn't catch his eye, and those who messaged him first didn't click. But when he stumbled upon Isabella's photo, she looked like a dead ringer for Jennifer Lopez, and he couldn't resist reaching out. Isabella and Lewis chatted for a good while. She spilled about her dreams of moving to the States from Colombia, her language struggles, and her job hunt. Eventually, she opened up about her past relationships, trusting him with her story. Bennett wasn't bothered by Isabella's past or her pending divorce from William. She seemed fed up with it all and took the reins, initiating in-person meetups wherever Lewis was, be it England, Australia, or Thailand. Lewis, eager to impress his new love, splurged on a catamaran for Caribbean adventures with Isabella. As a kid, Bennett moved a lot and struggled to make friends, so he turned to adventure books like Jules Verne and Robert Louis Stevenson for solace. Treasure Island was his jam, and it seemed destined to shape his life. Isabella noticed that when they traveled together, Bennett was all in, leaving work behind and embracing the adventure. Isabella noticed Bennett's work took a back seat during their travels, but he brushed it off, claiming his company ran itself. She once brought it up, but he joked it off, or said he had a fat inheritance covering things. Isabella bought it and let it slide. In July 2016, Isabella and Lewis welcomed their first child, a daughter named Amelia. Excitement turned to tension as they clashed over how to raise her and where to live. Lewis pushed for Australia, near his folks, while Isabella dug in her heels, not wanting to leave America. After much back and forth, Lewis caved, and they all moved to Florida in 2017. With their daughter already born, they decided to tie the knot. Isabella longed for a honeymoon, hoping to reignite their carefree early days. Lewis agreed, but said it would have to wait a bit. True to his word, a honeymoon was on the horizon. After Lewis returned from Australia, they set off on their romantic cruise in late April 2017. Social media was flooded with smiling photos of their Caribbean adventure, but then silence. 2 weeks later, Isabella popped up online, saying they were in Cuba and figuring out their way back to Florida. On May 15, the Coast Guard got a distress call from Lewis. He was alone on a raft in the open sea. Rescuers rushed to find him and located him near the Bahamas. He was indeed alone on a boat loaded with supplies. Once ashore, Lewis shared his story. On May 14, after a long day, Lewis asked Isabella to take over the catamaran so he could rest. He dozed off in the cabin. Suddenly, a loud thud woke him. He called for Isabella, but no answer. Up top, he saw she was gone, and water was flooding in through a hole in the boat. It was sinking fast. Lewis figured Isabella got tossed overboard but had a life vest on, so she'd be okay. He grabbed his stuff and hopped onto the rescue boat, leaving behind anything that wasn't his. The rescuers found it odd. Seemed like he'd given up hope of finding Isabella alive. Lewis packed his tea set and stashed silver coins in aluminum tubes in his backpack. But the Coast Guard didn't focus on that. They were all about finding Isabella. They pulled out all the stops, using helicopters and every tool they had to search the area, but they couldn't find her. The Coast Guard found the catamaran Lewis mentioned had crashed on underwater rocks, but there were no rocks or reefs nearby, and the boat hadn't sunk completely. They sent divers to inspect it again. The examination results contradicted Lewis's story. There were no underwater rocks, as he claimed. The boat couldn't have hit anything. Plus, the holes in the bottom were from inside, not outside a real head-scratcher. The investigation revealed that all the escape hatches on the boat were open, hastening its sinking. Lewis claimed he left the boat as he was supposed to, but opening escape hatches is a big no-no unless it's a last resort. Also, as an experienced seafarer, Lewis should have used a beacon or satellite phone for rescuers to locate them, but he didn't. The situation started to look like Lewis intentionally sank the boat to cover his tracks, but Isabella's missing remained a mystery. Despite 120 hours passing since the catamaran wreck, search efforts continued. The chances of finding Isabella alive in the open sea dwindled with each passing hour. On May 18, the search was called off, with Isabella still missing. Lewis returned home alone. Lewis's behavior raised eyebrows. He didn't seem too concerned about Isabella's disappearance. Buying a solo ticket to Australia for May 19 indicated he had little hope the rescue team would find her, dead or alive. Surprisingly, he made efforts to obtain Isabella's death certificate swiftly. Lewis's actions hinted at a darker motive. He sought Isabella's death certificate to claim insurance benefits, but his attempt was thwarted when the insurance company rejected his claim. Desperate, he visited Isabella's parents to take their daughter, Emilia, but they held him responsible for Isabella's fate and refused to hand her over. Lewis resorted to calling the police to retrieve Emilia from Isabella's parents on May 28. He then left Emilia with his parents in the UK and returned to Florida to pursue the insurance payment he believed he was entitled to by law. However, his behavior only heightened suspicions among the police, who viewed him as the prime suspect in Isabella's disappearance. Soon after Isabella's disappearance at sea, suspicion fell heavily upon Lewis Bennett, her husband. While there was no direct evidence linking him to her demise, various pieces of the puzzle painted a troubling picture. Lewis's behavior after Isabella went missing was peculiar. He seemed more focused on claiming insurance benefits and retrieving his daughter, Amelia, than on finding his missing wife. Despite numerous inconsistencies in his story and questionable actions, such as leaving escape hatches open on the sinking catamaran and attempting to obtain Isabella's death certificate hastily, the local authorities lacked concrete proof of foul play. However, the discovery of recording devices in their home containing Isabella's recordings of Lewis threatening her shed light on the turbulent nature of their relationship. Isabella had confided in friends about her desire to leave Lewis due to his controlling and financially reckless behavior. Lewis's mounting debts, coupled with his extravagant spending on non-essential items like Thai boxing lessons, further strained their marriage. Investigations uncovered Lewis's involvement in international money transfers and the origin of the rare coins found in his possession, linking him to a smuggling operation. While Lewis was convicted and sentenced to 7 months in prison for smuggling, the evidence surrounding Isabella's disappearance remained circumstantial. Ultimately, the prosecution's case against Lewis for Isabella's murder lacked concrete and a piece of strong evidence. Despite facing pressure from Isabella's grieving relatives, Lewis accepted a plea deal to avoid a potentially longer sentence. His guilty plea secured him 8 years in prison, during which time all insurance payments and assets claimed by Lewis on behalf of Isabella would go to Amelia. Isabella's relatives, while dissatisfied with the outcome, recognized the complexities of the situation. They understood that without sufficient evidence to prove premeditated murder, Lewis would likely serve minimal time for smuggling and be released soon. In November 2018, Lewis was sentenced, and arrangements were made for Amelia's future well-being. Acknowledging the psychological trauma she would inevitably face as she grew older. What do you think about this case? Stay tuned. We'll catch you with a new nail-biting crime thriller tomorrow.